All right, today we talk about John Dewey's short essay on democracy. John Dewey was a highly influential American philosopher in the first half of the 20th century, and he's one of he's an eminent philosopher in the group of philosophers known as the pragmatists. Pragmatism is a distinctly American tradition in philosophy and also includes Charles Peirce, William James, and Dewey, as well as Dewey and some others. Now, Dewey was highly influential during his lifetime. Since his death, his reputation among philosophers has generally waned. People don't think he's quite so hot as they used to, but he remains influential in some areas, specifically philosophy of education, where he wrote a lot and apparently seems to have influenced a lot about the American public school system, for better or for worse. Now, Dewey is completely committed to democracy, not just as a form of civil government, but as a way of life, as the distinctly human way of existing and flourishing together. So he says the ultimate goal of democracy, the ultimate goal here is the general social welfare and the full development of human beings as individuals. And the necessary conditions for attaining that goal are that we all participate in the formation of the values that regulate our life together. So his conception of democracy it's like a worldview. It's more than just here's how we should run the government, but it's like if we want to flourish as human beings, then we've got to participate in the formation of the rules that govern us in any kind of social sphere that we're in. Democratic government as like a civil government structure that involves regular elections, rule by representatives and so forth. Those kind of governmental structures are just tools for actualizing democracy as this truly human way of life. Now, why is it that democracy is the truly human way of life? He puts this in a negative form and a positive form. Negatively, he says the big idea here is this, that no man or limited set of men is wise enough or good enough to rule the others without their consent. Nobody's that smart. Now, who is going to disagree with that? Well, if you'll remember, Plato would disagree with that statement. Would Plato agree that no man or limited set of men is wise enough to rule the others without their consent? Heck no. He says the people you want to be in charge are the people who really know the form of the good. You don't want the sailors taking over the ship from the captain and trying to all fight for the helm, or all of them having a voice and deciding where the ship is going. You want the pilot, the navigator, the guy who actually knows the stars and knows the maps. You want him to be in charge. And most of us don't know the stars and know the maps. Most of us don't really know what's good for the state. We don't know what should be done. You want the people who know to be leaders. That's not all of us. It's the philosopher kings. And the philosopher kings, of course, are not elected. They're chosen on the basis of their merits out of the ruling class, the class of rulers. So Plato says it's going to screw up the state and totally overthrow justice if we have people from these other classes, like the class of artisans and so forth, and farmers, ruling. That's going to destroy everything. Or even if we have guardians who aren't really cut out to be rulers, if we have them in charge, no way, that's going to be terrible. So for Plato, consent has nothing to do with who gets to rule. After all, the philosopher kings themselves don't even want to rule. They'd rather be philosophizing. And Dewey is going the exact opposite direction. Now, a positive way of saying Dewey's idea of democracy is this, that everybody who's affected by social institutions must have a share in producing and managing them. Right? Again, that's just the flip side of that negative way of stating it. Now, you can contrast this democratic method 2, of mutual consultation and voluntary agreement. You can contrast that method of government with kind of the older way that Dewey says this replaced. That is the subordination of most people to a few people. And that subordination is enforced from above, either by physical or economic or psychological or moral methods. People are being coerced. They're being forced to submit to the rule of the few, historically. Now, who's that bad for, according to Dewey? It's not just bad for the people who have to submit. It's bad for even the rulers, he says. Why? Because it deprives not only the individual, but the whole social body of the contributions that those people could be making, but now they're not making. In other words, when you cut my voice out of the government and I don't get to participate in the formation of the social institutions that govern me, you're losing out on all the helpful things that I might have to say and all my good ideas. Now you don't know them because just a few of you are ruling. Now what's a guy like Plato going to say? Plato's going to say, Sasser, that is no big loss because you don't really have much to contribute unless you know the form of the good. Most people don't have a lot to contribute except their own very ignorant and limited ideas about the world. How much does the farmer really know about statecraft or about international relations? They know how to farm and that's it. Let the philosopher kings look at the big picture. People who have studied things and really know what's good for the whole. But Dewey says, hold on a second, Plato. You're right. Lots of people are very ignorant. You're right. Farmers don't know a lot except about farming or whatever. I mean, I'm a philosopher. I don't know anything about how cars work or anything. But Dewey says, however ignorant people may be, individuals are wiser than anyone else about the troubles that they themselves suffer from. He says, you do know better than anybody else where the shoe pinches your foot, right? Nobody else knows that. And the state can't be wisely guided. That our social institutions can't be effective unless we hear from everybody about what their particular problems are. No matter how dumb you are, you know what your problems are. And we need to hear from that. So that's the superiority, says Dewey, of democracy to these other methods. Now, democracy is based on some foundational principles. Faith in the capacities of human nature. That is, faith in human intelligence when it's all pooled together and cooperative. It's not a faith that any individual person can figure out all the answers, but it's a faith that together, if we combine all of our experience, we can do better. There's also a belief in equality. Now, this isn't a belief that we all have equal intelligence or equal gifts or equal abilities. That's not it. But democracy, he says, is founded on a belief in equal opportunity and treatment by the law. That is, everybody should have a chance at attaining positions of influence and power in the social structure. Nobody gets ruled out just because of the class you come from, the family you come from, or anything like that. And then finally, there's intellectual freedom, freedom of mind. And Dewey says that's even more important than freedom of action. The kind of freedom that matters in democracy isn't just the ability to do what you want. That's secondary. The most important freedom is to think what you want. And that's what all the other freedoms are based on. We have freedom of speech so that we can express our thoughts and talk about them. Freedom of the press so that we can, converse about them even with people we can't talk to. Freedom of assembly so we can all get together and exchange ideas. All of those core, freedom of religion so that you can practice your religious beliefs and so forth. All of those are based on intellectual freedom as a core value. Now, for Dewey, this is a lot bigger than just politics, as we said before. Every human social group has some kind of form of government, some way of making decisions, some form of leadership. And Dewey thinks that political democracy, civil government democracy, that's only going to survive if the citizens have been formed in their character by democratic institutions in every other sphere of life. The presence of democratic methods in all social relationships is what political democracy stands or falls with. Here's why he cares about this. He's writing this in 1937 in the run-up to World War II. And what you're seeing in Europe is the rise of fascism. And many people criticizing democracy as the system of weak people. And really, strength lies in fascist strongmen and strength from above. So you can think of Germany, you could think of Mussolini in Italy, even imperialist Japan. It's also the year in which you're in the middle of Stalin's purges in the Soviet Union. So people who thought that Lenin's communist revolution was pretty benign, they're changing their tune now that Stalin is killing 1 million of his own people for dissent. So in any case, political democracy is not a given in the world at this time. And so he's really trying to make it defensive. And he says we've got to have democracy in all of our social institutions, including this: family, got to be democratic. School, it's got to be democratic. Businesses, your religious organizations, and all of these social groups, he says, if you exclude people from participation in the formation of their leadership and direction, that's going to diminish people's sense of responsibility and therefore their public spirit and their ability to practice democracy even in the civil government. A few things to think here as you consider Dewey's position. First of all, I'm going to skip ahead. Think about this last point he made. He wants democracy in all social relationships. What would democracy look like in, say, the family? Would that mean voting on family decisions? Does everybody get an equal vote? Children and parents? Think about this, how this plays out in other spheres too. What would democracy look like in a school setting, in a church setting, in a business setting? Is democracy going to work in those areas? Democracy as he conceives of it? What are the implications for Dewey's view if it doesn't? Let's think then about Dewey versus Socrates, right? Dewey says we've all got to participate. The democracy is necessary for human flourishing in order to achieve the good. Socrates thinks most people don't even know what's good for society or themselves. Who do you think's right? Are we going to be better off if we let everybody participate in the government, or if we just limit it to people who really know what's good? What do you think about that? How do you think democracy is working out now? Think about it. And here's another question. This kind of plays along on the same issue. Let's say that you've got the wisest person in the world, way wiser than you could ever be, and she offers to be your life coach, as long as you agree to do whatever she advises you. She's only got your best interest at heart. She's a philosopher queen. Should you accept her offer or not? In other words, how important is it that you really have a voice in the direction of your life, as long as it's going to be run by somebody smart? What if she made the same offer to rule America? Do you think America should capitulate to the wisest person in the world? Just say, yeah, forget about all these elections and stuff. Let's just do what she says. She is the wiser than the rest of us. What do you think? And then final questions. What if democracy produced worse results than some other system, like, say, rule by a small group of experts? Would that give you a reason to ditch democracy? And do you think democracy does work? How's it going? Is it better than the alternatives? Think about it.